currently for my own mobile company, Rustcraft Digital. Started that up about a year and a half ago at this point. But I'll tell you a little bit more about my background. But what we're going to talk about today is why does mobile matter? Hopefully you feel as though you're a little bit on board to this after the other presentations you've seen. But we will revisit this quickly, going through some of the stats. And then we're going to go into what I like to call Mobile University. So we'll go through Mobile 101, 201, and 301. And the intent there is really that you can all understand how to prioritize mobile efforts. There's a lot going on in the mobile space, and it's very confusing to understand what sort of boxes you need to check off first. So we will be going through that. But first, a little bit about my background in mobile. I started my career at Macy's as a buyer and also in print marketing. And I told someone this story earlier, but I was sitting in a meeting, and it was about a year after I got my first iPhone, which was a very exciting experience. And I sat in a meeting for about an hour talking about a New York Times print ad that we were going to run at Macy's. And I think it cost about $125,000. We were debating which one of our vendors in the luxury women's footwear area we were going to sell that ad to. And somewhere in that meeting, I decided, you know, I don't really think I'm in the right role for myself for positioning myself to the future. So I started training myself up on technology and knew that I wanted to make that leap forward into everything that I was becoming obsessed about and addicted with my iPhone device. So what I currently do is I split my time between teaching mobile and, for lack of a better word choice, doing mobile. And the reason is because as digital marketers, our roles are very hybrid. So there isn't really a good word for what I do in mobile because it's a combination of digital marketing, product management, user experience design. And that's probably what's being asked of a lot of you every day, to become like this hybrid marketer. That's very normal. Mobile's part of the problem. It's also part of the solution. So I spend part of my time doing mobile. Over the past 5 years, I have designed and deployed about 30 mobile apps and mobile websites, mobile responsive sites. And I also spend part of my time teaching. I teach for General Assembly. I also have developed online learning curriculums for the American Marketing Association. And they bring me in to do workshops for companies like Disney, like L'Oreal, PwC, and teach them about all things digital. And the reason I have to do so much teaching around mobile, and these days actually a lot less consulting, is because a lot of people aren't bought in to the importance of mobile. So that's a part of my role. And then on the doing mobile side, I help people decide what they want to build, how they're going to build it, prioritize those efforts, help them deploy those things, market those solutions, etc. So great, thanks for the slide of logos. I'm sure you appreciated that. So what does she know about the arts? Well, a little bit of backstory. I'm incredibly passionate about the arts. I grew up on Cape Cod. I found this photo, I am in this photo, of myself on the internet. But I grew up in Cape Cod, and I was involved in several theaters there. For anyone who's grown up on Cape Cod, you're probably not in this room. There's not a whole lot to do in the winter on Cape Cod. So the arts kept me off of the mean streets of downtown Hyannis. And that's where I grew up. And I became very involved in arts for that reason. I grew up in the theater. I love it. I'm very passionate about it. And I also currently work with a lot of startups. So I very much understand that constraint of human resources and budget, and that's what I want to bring to you guys today in this presentation. All right, so that's me, in case you couldn't figure that out. Be grateful, because I don't have a picture from 10 years ago of me in Rocky Horror, which was actually the last time I had a mic pack in my bra. So be grateful for that. All right, so the state of mobile currently, you've seen a lot of these stats over the past couple days. But let's take a little poll. This is going back in time. Who had a Palm Pilot? Oh, great. Whoever calendared on their Palm Pilot? Yeah, early adopters. I love it. That was an app, right? How about Snake on your Nokia? Yeah, keep your hands up if it was like Snake on your Nokia in chemistry class. Right? Yeah, okay. All right, so that's a mobile app experience as well. But the history of mobile in general has been very, very brief. So let's see here. In 2000, that was around the time when we were having these Palm Pilot Nokia experiences. The Palm Pilots were certainly early smartphones. It was also the first year marketers were allowed to SMS message customers. So text messaging existed before that. It's the first time marketers could take advantage of it. In 2007, we got our first iPhone. 2008, we got our first Android. A year later, Google got into the mobile ad space with AdMob. And a year after that, Apple got into the ad space with iAd. And since then, there's been an explosion of technology. There's lots of mobile payment solutions like Google Wallet, and then later on we got Apple Pay. There's lots of location-based technology like iBeacons. My background is very strong in the location-based technology space. We're not going to talk about it today much, but I encourage you, if you want to nerd out on something like beacons, find me later. But there's been this explosion of vocabulary, and it's traumatizing because none of us know what any of this means. And if I spend a few days working on a project with a very large organization that's not very innovative, maybe doesn't move very fast, I come back to the office and I'm working with a startup on their app, and I realize I've missed out on all this mobile news, and some new hot term has come up. So that's very normal. But the truth is that mobile matters, and it matters more than desktop. So mobile traffic eclipsed desktop traffic at the end of 2013. What year are we about to end now? 2015. This change happened 2 years ago. In early 2014, mobile app traffic alone, so that first number I quoted was mobile app and mobile web, mobile app traffic alone, as far as the amount of time we spend accessing the internet, eclipsed desktop usage by itself. So, why aren't the marketing dollars following? I love this study. This is from Mary Meeker's annual Internet Trends report. And what it shows you along the x-axis here is different forms of media and how we spend our time versus how much money we spend as marketers against these different forms of media. And what you can see from mobile is we spend about 24% of our time there, and marketers spend about 8% of their dollars there. It's highly measurable, mobile, so this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it represents currently in the US upwards of $25 billion a year of missed opportunity of ad spend. But the pace of innovation is terrifying in mobile. It's terrifying for me. Like I said, when I go and work with a big organization, again, that tends to be not very adaptable or move very quickly, and I come back after a few days at an offsite there, I've missed something in mobile news, like something pivotal and critical. So let's take a lesson from the book of BlackBerry. If anyone in this room has a BlackBerry, don't tell me about it. I'm kind of going to judge you, okay? So just keep that to yourself. But something happened with BlackBerry, and it's a great lesson in this pace of innovation that I was talking about. And if we flash back to 6 years ago, we've got BlackBerry represented by RIM here as this peach bar. And in 2009, they controlled 38% market share 6 years ago. That was more at the time than iPhone and Android combined. And if we fast forward to today, BlackBerry controls just over 1% of market share. And the company I was at the time, 5 years ago or so, maybe 6 years ago at this point, we built a BlackBerry app for Best Buy. And Best Buy is the kind of company that has maybe the money to burn on these kinds of solutions, make a mistake on BlackBerry, bet wrong. You guys don't. And this pace of innovation in mobile for that reason is terrifying. You want to invest your money in a smart way. So who are all these mobile users? We think they're who? Who's on the slide? One word we love to say about these people, and it starts with an M. Millennials. Yeah. So we think these smartphone users are all millennials. But if you look at the audience of 55 plus who own mobile devices, 65% of those devices are smartphone devices for 55 plus currently. So this isn't a millennial conversation. It's certainly not anymore. We need to know not only our users and their demographic, but we also need to know their devices and their operating systems if you want to get real fancy, right? And some are more dependent than others. So this younger demographic, these are what we consider the mobile dependents. There's 3 different categories. Younger folks fall into this bucket. So do those with low household income and low education levels. And so do non-whites, African Americans and Latinos. And this is US-based data, Pew Research. You can go and find this and take a look at it on your own. But this is this mobile dependent demographic that's emerging. And it means that mobile's their primary device for accessing the internet. And in a lot of cases, their only device for accessing the internet. So we want to keep these folks in mind, especially if they are our members and our customers. If your members, if your customers, if your donors fall into these categories, you have to be in mobile. You have to be in mobile. And the devices matter as well. So we talked about the death of the BlackBerry. But if we look at devices today in the US, it's completely owned by iPhone and Android. So 95% market share is controlled by iPhone and Android in the US, more so Android than iPhone. But if anyone in this room has an international audience, if you go on tour internationally, for example, or if you, for example, teach classes internationally within your organization, and those people engage with your website or your company in that way, you want to keep in mind that these numbers are really only true in the US. So iPhone's huge here. That's not true when you look globally. So keep that in mind only if that's a factor for your organization. So how are these devices used? Well, the data shows that mobile apps are the clear consumer preference. And sometimes it's hard for me to convince people that that's true. So how do we spend our mobile time? What this chart shows you is how much of our time we spend in mobile apps versus mobile websites across smartphones and tablets. This data was from the end of 2014. And we spend 88% of our time in mobile apps as compared to 12% of our time in mobile web. And this is of the percent total that's our total mobile time. And when I show people this number, usually like someone leans over to someone else and they're like, that's not me. I'm not an 88%er. I guess we could try to work that. So how do we spend this time? How much time is it? By 2016, our app time alone will be 3 hours and 15 minutes a day on average. So that app that Eric mentioned earlier about tracking how often you're checking your phone, it's probably more than you think it is. And how do we spend this 88% of our time in mobile apps? Well, these are meant to represent categories more so than specific apps, but some of the top apps used are certainly up here. We spend that time checking our email through mobile applications, getting navigation directions, right, through Google Maps, whatever your map of choice is, social media, and any kind of video platform, that definitely sucks up a lot of our time, right? Listening to music, shopping's a smaller percentage, playing games. So that's how we're spending 88% of our time on a mobile device, but that doesn't necessarily mean that investing in an app is right for your organization. That might mean it's not right ever. That might mean it's not right today. But what you have to do is you do have to prioritize your mobile efforts, and that's what we're going to talk the balance of the presentation about. So we have to think about this customer decision journey, and I do teach a lot of marketing to like in-class students, and so we have to go over this kind of stuff. But when we talk about this customer decision journey, or this, it could be the donor decision journey, the member decision journey, you start at a certain point where you don't know what's going on, you're not familiar with the brand, you're not familiar with who's putting on that show, maybe because the name recognition is tied to the show itself. So you go looking out for things, searching. So these are your customer acquisition loop, this larger loop that you see up here. And once you engage, once you buy a ticket, attend an event, whatever it happens to be, you then become a part of this loyalty loop. And those are the customers that it's going to cost us less money to bring back. So all of the themes of remarketing that we're going on, that's speaking to the same thing here. So we want to think of this broad acquisition loop as our mobile web audience. And we want to think of this smaller loop, our loyalty loop, as our mobile app audience. The best example I could give of this is in the airline industry. The airlines were very, very quick into the mobile space. And apps are for loyalists, and the airlines got that, and they got that early on. And what I like to say about mobile is if you'll put the card in your wallet, you'll put the app on your phone. So that's the kind of audience that we're dealing with here, and airlines are a great analogy for that. There are some airlines you may avoid flying, but every once in a while you've got to like connect on a leg of that terrible airline that you hate flying. You're not going to download that app. You're probably just going to check your flight status on the mobile website. You're going to use the app for the airline that you like to travel with, where you actually care about your points. And on the JetBlue app, you can check the TV stations and what's on at what time while you're in flight, right? So that's the difference between the mobile web and the mobile app experiences. And the reason I bring this up is because I used to sit in a lot of rooms. It happens a lot less often now. I used to sit in a lot of rooms where people would say, well, do I need a mobile website or a mobile app? And it's not this competitive environment. It's not mobile web versus a mobile application. It's a different customer. It's a different use case. It's a different preference for engagement with your brand. So we want to meet all user needs with mobile web, and then we want to think about layering on a mobile application that's a bit more of a personalized experience for our more loyal audience. So that's the intro. Everyone's bought on. Mobile's important? Good. More stats? No, that stuff's boring. Okay. So Mobile 101. This is about having, I'm just realizing my entire presentation is Halloween themed. So happy Halloween. Mobile 101 certification. This is about having a mobile optimized site. This is the first step for everyone, right? If you're having those meetings where everyone's debating like, we need an app, we need a mobile website, and you don't yet have a mobile optimized site, your answer is you need a mobile optimized site. And I love to build apps. So that's a very strong statement coming from me. So you need to know a little bit about mobile websites in order to do that. You need to know about the different types of mobile sites. And I don't want to confuse anyone with too much terminology here, but when we first had mobile responsive sites, they were separate URLs. And we call these M dot sites because they had URLs that started with M dot, right? They were separate URLs, which meant separate sites, which meant for us as marketers, every time we wanted to change an image, you actually had to do twice the work because you were maintaining two completely separate sites. But at the time that M dot sites came about, they came about because there weren't any other solutions, so there weren't any other choices. Today, what we have that's much more common are responsive sites. And so these are sites that have one URL, and that website is so smart, it knows what kind of device you're on, and it's going to resize the site depending on what type of device you're coming on, but it's only one URL. So for you as a marketer, when you upload information to that content management system, whether it's copy or an image or a video, whatever it is, you only have to do that once, and it appears across all of your different versions of your site on your different devices, one URL. Good? All right. It's going to get easier soon. There's another type of site that's called a dynamic or adaptive site, and this is where a company like Amazon might want to take the opportunity to create a customized experience on a smartphone. It could even be a specific smartphone within the range of smartphones or a tablet, but they still want to maintain that one URL. So this type of site can be great, but you have to have the power internally to be able to now, again, you have one URL, that's great, but you still have to manage content and how it appears across the customizations that you've made across multiple devices. So for most of the people in the room, to backtrack for a second, this is probably the solution that makes the most sense. Happy to field any questions of it after. But it's a nice balance between the amount of management and how well that experience is going to render across multiple devices. All right, so that's a little bit about the types of mobile sites. And now we're going to talk about 7 tips to optimize, but also, I might have made up this word, operationalize? Do people say that? I don't know. But it's about the amount of management you put into these things. It's a very important consideration. So 7 tips to optimize your mobile site. And I put mobile in parentheses for a reason, because it's one site, but you get it? I'm getting some nods. Okay, right? So it's just, if we get to this state of responsive site, like it's just our site. We're not talking about our mobile site anymore. So first of all, your management should match your team. This theme has already come up in the past day or so, right? You should only build what you can actually manage in terms of a mobile site. One of the biggest problems I see is I see a combination of too many cooks in the kitchen combined with, which quickly leads to, I should say, everything in the kitchen sink. Your organization probably can't support everything in the kitchen sink, so we need to be a little careful about these considerations and build the types of mobile sites that we can actually manage. Not mobile sites, just sites, right? So a couple of pro tips here. These are examples you see from Express, the clothing retailer, and also Net-a-Porter. And what they've done here in their site design is they've abstracted image from copy. And this makes our management of swapping out image assets a lot easier as marketers. Because as you change the size of the site, the text itself is not a part of the image, so the text doesn't shrink down. So this is just one consideration and one way in which folks have gotten a little savvy about their responsive redesigns, is to separate image from copy in this way. Another tip here is if you're ever thinking about image assets, any assets you're uploading to your content management system, please, please do this very simple thing. Email them to yourself and open them up on your own phone, right? It's really easy. But if you're evaluating assets for the majority of your audience from a 27-inch monitor, really, right? It's not an option anymore. So we can check there. If it looks great on a 27-inch monitor, that's a good place to start. But email yourself that image. It's a really easy tip. Or if you use a cloud-based solution, open up the image in Google Drive. That was mentioned yesterday. So just take a look on mobile and make sure that things look okay in mobile as far as the sizing of that asset. All right, tip number 2. Lots of talk about conversions, KPIs this week. Keep your conversions within reach. And this photo emphasizes for you different sizes of iPhones. So if we back up to the 4S, like those were the easy days of mobile, right? You could almost reach everything with one finger. Once we get up to the 6 Plus, we have a little bit of a problem as far as this zone of like natural reachability. So whatever your conversion point is, it's a donation, it's an email sign up, it's buying a ticket. That should be within this green zone, the zone of natural, which the MetaOpera site does very well, keeping those call to action buttons within a thumb's reach. I feel bad, if anyone's left-handed on your mobile device at this point, I feel badly, but you get it, you just flip it, right? Okay. So third tip here, simplify your navigation. And what I would recommend here, this is a best practice, it certainly varies across the board. Try to limit your navigation to 4 to 6 categories. For larger organizations, this is impossible because everyone wants to like regurgitate their org chart on their website. But for navigation purposes, nobody cares about your org chart. We're all special snowflakes, but we don't all need to be on the website, right? So how do you decide then? How do you decide what these 4 to 6 categories are going to be? It's tough and it gets heated, right? Because of the org chart. It gets serious. But you want to drive with usage analytics. So everything you learned about in Google Analytics, cut all that data and look just at your mobile traffic and understand how people who reach your site currently on mobile are using it. That's a good indication of what they're already navigating to. And then look at search behavior on mobile. And that'll show you what people are looking for when they're trying to find your site, what they want to do when they get to your site. Search behavior, remember, shows you intent. It shows you that thing they want to do when they get there. So use those two as indicators of how to start thinking about simplifying your navigation on mobile. And let's see, do we have anything else here? Yes, use your customer's language, not your org chart lingo on this one. This is the hard one. This should have gotten like a special asterisk or something. But you have to start ushering in a mobile-first culture. And this is hard. This is the hardest one. This is that culture stuff, that buy-in stuff that everyone's been talking about throughout the presentations. This is really hard. But you want to have those image assets, like I said, loaded up to your phone so that when you're in these conversations internally, whether you're talking about assets or in a second we'll talk about analytics, you have to have a mobile-first conversation. Just have that stuff on your phone. Nothing shows it better than X% of our audience comes from this place and this is what they see. Does it even appear above the fold? Can you even read the text? So you want to consider it from an asset perspective, but you also want to consider it from an analytics perspective. Anyone who goes back to the office on Monday and starts playing around with some of these Google Analytics tricks that we've all learned, if you're not having that conversation about mobile, if you're not having a mobile-specific conversation and that behavior is different, mobile behavior is different, then you're doing yourself a disservice as an organization. So you have to be mobile-first in terms of your assets and also be mobile-first in terms of your data analysis. Your site has to be fast. Speed matters a lot. 3 seconds, after 3 seconds, about 40% of your users give up. If your site takes longer than 3 seconds to load on mobile, 40% of your users have left the building. Google recommends at the other end of this chart here, a 1 second load time on mobile for all content above the fold. That's tough. I've worked on a lot of sites. That 1 second time is really tough unless you're just serving up text. A lot of you are moving towards this content-rich strategy, content-rich sites, which means video, beautiful photography. All of these things make site load slow. So if we look across industry benchmarks, oh, look at that, the seconds. Too bad, that S. If we look across the industry benchmarks, what we see is that financial services sites take about 4.5 seconds to load on mobile. Retail sites take about 7 seconds. And maybe the most relevant benchmark here, because arts organizations were not included in this index, is about 9.5 seconds for news sites. And I say that because they're very content-heavy sites. So that might be the comparison or the benchmark that makes the most sense here. Google also has a time measurement tool. So if you Google that, you'll see that Google has a page load time tool. So you can test how your site is currently performing against these few of these benchmarks, at least, using that Google tool. Next, short, smart forms in mobile. So even in advance of launching a mobile responsive site, you might want to consider optimizing forms on your site. And these are often the points of conversion, the signing up for email, the buying a ticket, the becoming a member, right? So you might be able to mobile optimize just form experiences or conversion points in advance of mobile refreshing your site. And the reason that that's important is because it could take a long time to build that new site. I think organizations often are surprised at how long it does take. And in the interim, if you can make a small investment in optimizing these forms as points of conversion, that would be a great thing to do. And forms can be smart too. So you should challenge your forms to limit the fields, limit the number of form fields that you have. A simple way to do that we've been doing in the retail space for a long time is if somebody gives you their zip code, you should definitely not ask them for their city and state, right? So that kind of stuff. That's what we mean by being smart. And then you want to constantly test and optimize. Data plays a big part here. You're not always going to get it right, but A/B testing tools now are pretty run-of-the-mill. They're pretty self-service. They don't require a lot of developer support. And you can test, should the button be red or orange, green or purple? Those are sort of extreme examples of button colors, but you can test those things. You can test image assets, right? You want to constantly be testing your mobile experience and optimizing towards what the new version of best performance is between those two competing versions. And ultimately, all 7 of these tie back to being your own user. So many times I see marketers saying something's going on with their technology, and I ask, well, did you try it on your own phone? Do you know how to, like, have you, and they're, well, on my desktop, it was whatever. You have to be your own user. And it's the way in which you spot all of these opportunities for optimization. But because we sit at our desks all day, it actually often does mean as a marketer turning away from looking at my own website on a desktop and saying, you know what, I'm going to give that experience a shot on my mobile device and see what the member is actually going through. So we have to be our own users. When we talk about analytics, I have a little bit of good news here. Mobile analytics, because again, we're talking about one site, we should be shopping from the same bucket of metrics for mobile web. This is different in the app space. But in mobile web, we're generally shopping from the same bucket of metrics as we use for our desktop site. But we have to keep in mind that behavior could be different. So we might have the same driving KPIs. We're looking at the same metrics every day when we get into the office on our newly optimized Google dashboard, right? And we're looking at the same measurements, but we want to look for behavioral differences potentially on mobile that we could leverage in some way. User behavior is different. We also think of smartphone and tablet behavior as being different from one another, but the truth is the tablet device is no longer this couch surfing device. That one's thrown around a lot. That you use your tablet when you're sitting on the couch and you only use your phone when you're like running around frantically and need to do things with, very quickly. Not necessarily true anymore. So our smartphones, because the screens have gotten bigger, longer battery life, better operating systems, lots of reasons. But our behavior now on a smartphone much more resembles the behavior that we used to take if you had a tablet on a tablet device. So that behaviorally is kind of merging as well. And you want to, with your analytics, establish normalcy and then benchmark your KPIs. You might want to do that in a mobile-specific way, depending on how many differences in the site you're making across different devices. And then the last one, this one's always tough for marketers because we tell you to measure everything. Attribution in mobile, it's my opinion, and I'll take up any conversations to the contrary after this. Attribution in mobile is a little bit of a mess right now. It's a little bit of a mess, and there are lots of people working on very sophisticated algorithms to try to sort this out. But it remains a challenge for a lot of organizations, And a lot of the companies that are figuring out attribution in mobile are paying a ton of money for very, very custom solutions because there aren't beautiful Google Analytics like out of the box solutions for everyone in mobile as far as attribution is concerned. And what makes attribution confusing is also behavior between mobile web and mobile app and desktop and potentially offline actions that people are taking. So if you feel frustrated by this, just know that you're not alone, and there are a lot of data nerds working very hard to solve this problem for you. When we think about mobile web versus mobile app analytics, something to share from my retail experience would be, and this ties again to that, mobile web's for acquisition, mobile apps are for your loyalist. But what I saw in the retail space and continue to see is that on the mobile website, you're going to see way more visits, and you're going to see a lot more revenue. But on the app side, because there's that hurdle of having to download something, what you see is you see fewer visits, but a higher conversion rate, because they're already bought in, right? This kind of intuitively makes some sense. So an app is a little bit more about extracting that extra like customer lifetime value from customers who are already engaging with your brand. All right, so that was our mobile 101. Got to get some mobile optimized sites up. Mobile 201, which I'm going to cruise through pretty quickly. I have no idea how I'm doing on time. Yeah, okay. Mobile 201 is about optimizing traffic drivers to your mobile site. So all of the other mobile places where people are coming from to find your site on a mobile device. And I'm going to go through this section quickly because there's been so many content sessions. You've gotten actually better advice on what content to put out into some of these channels. But I just want to underscore the importance of a few of them. So how do customers find your site on mobile? 3 different ways. There were other ways in this study as well, but the top 3 are email, social, and search. So these are the top 3 ways in which someone is finding your mobile site, or your site rather, from a mobile device. So we need to, as marketers, optimize our search from a mobile perspective. And search has changed a lot in mobile. We show a lot more intent with our mobile searches, right? You might be looking on your desktop device a few days in advance of the weekend and saying like, things to do this weekend. It's broad, it's kind of exploratory. On your mobile device, you're going to say some kind of Google search that sounds like, want to see a show this weekend near me, P.S. I love Shakespeare, right? We write crazy stuff into Google, and nobody wants anyone to ever see their search history. But in mobile, we often type in these much more specific searches. They show a lot more intent in that way. So keep in mind that if someone's looking for you on mobile, you also want to make sure that they're landing on the most relevant experience. If you have an MDOT site, which is a site that's separate from your main site, you need to keep in mind that you want to send those mobile search users to your MDOT site and your desktop users to your full site, and make sure that they're always getting that mobile optimized experience. Some of this is certainly stomped out with a responsive site. You want to mobile optimize your email. So in 2011, 8% of emails were opened on mobile. Today it's 53%. You know where your own organization sits on that spectrum. But far too often I see emails that aren't mobile optimized. And you lose, by the way, 70%. 70% of your audience won't read your email if they open it and it's not mobile optimized. So you're going to lose 70% of those folks. But emails should be easy to read in terms of text size. They should be rich visually. It should be clear as to how to spot a call to action. All themes we've heard, I think, throughout the conference. You can litmus test these emails across all devices. And again, you want to send them to that mobile relevant experience. If you're clicking through to Facebook, are you sending them to the Facebook mobile website? Because guess what? How do we all interact with Facebook? On the app, right? Like not the mobile website. So if you're sending someone from an email to a social experience, that might be a way in which you consider mobile optimizing. Also, sorry, fun fact on the email front, Apple Watches only read the text-based version of your email. It would be a stretch to say probably any of your audiences or like a majority of them were Apple Watch owners, perhaps. But just a fun fact about the Apple Watch and having a text version of your email at all times. Mobile optimize in terms of social. This has been talked about a lot, but any advice you receive about social, you should know is really just mobile social advice. So it's all the same thing because social activity now is happening far and beyond the majority in mobile. right? Almost exclusively in mobile. That's where social is happening. So any advice you receive about social, it's really mobile advice. So you want to take some of the tips we've already talked about in mind. Image optimization, beware of copy that you put in that image, because when someone accesses that on mobile, it shrinks down. Use URL shorteners. We've heard this one before. Video whenever possible. Yes, people convert more. Just do it, video everywhere. Consume your own social content to spot issues. This is again about being your own user. You look at your own social presence. How often do you look at your own social presence on mobile? Because you're sitting at your desk in front of a desktop device. And again, here you want to deep link the user to the most relevant content. So if there is a mobile optimized experience you can send that user to, that's ideal, as opposed to something that's not mobile optimized. So that was quick, but you got a lot of content tips this weekend. But that's the second piece of mobile that you should layer on after having a responsive site. Mobile 301, and where I've spent most of my time the past 5 years, is in building apps. So 301 is about assessing the need to even have a mobile application. You'll notice 301 is not like de facto just build one, right? This is about assessing the need for a mobile application. It's fun to dream up apps, but there are plenty of reasons not to build one. I assure you my entire Thanksgiving holiday will be family members coming up to me and saying, so I have this idea for an app. That's what you sign up for in this business, I guess. And it's fun to dream up apps, but there are a lot of reasons that you shouldn't build one. And I love building apps, and I think they're much more powerful experiences than mobile web. And we all, based on our own usage behavior, have shown that we prefer apps over mobile websites. But that doesn't mean it's right for your business. So let's remind ourselves, mobile app users are loyalists. They spend more, they convert at a higher rate. But there are reasons not to build an app. Number one, if you only have the budget for one release. Apps are not campaign-based strategies. Apps are lifestyle things. They need to be with us and constantly evolving. If you've budgeted to create one release of an app, you've got a serious surprise coming. Because Apple could release a new operating system that completely breaks your application and you have to invest to redevelop something, perhaps. But you can't just have one budget. I'm going to build an app and then it's done. Apps should be updated 4 to 8 times a year. Part of this is about fixing bugs. Part of this is about keeping users interested, right? And part of it's about just constantly optimizing and evolving with your user. One tenet of user experience is to evolve with your user. And if you can't afford to do that, then an app might not right now be the right solution for you, because they remain pretty expensive. So you only have a couple things for the user to do. If you only have a couple things for the user to do, especially if those things are things that they can do on your mobile site anyway, it's probably not the best to bring an app into the mix. If the user only needs it once. So this again ties back to that notion of campaign strategy. This happens a lot in sports. So I'm about to show you just how little I know about sports. But so when you think about playoffs, right? A lot of sports organizations will have an app around the playoffs, right? I know this is true because I go to the US Open like once a year and they have an app. So this happens in sports. And they have these apps, but they're around specific activities certain times of year. Well, one of the biggest challenges for companies who do this, and this happens all the time in sports with playoffs, is that they don't have anything for the user to do the rest of the year. So you want to have this concept of sort of also, what is the user using this for the entire year? And it shouldn't be a campaign-based strategy. An app is not a thing that appears for a month and then necessarily dies. It should provide, you shouldn't build one if it doesn't provide an improvement upon your mobile site. So if your app does exactly what your mobile site does, and don't you dare embed a mobile site within an application, because that makes me crazy. You build a mobile application to leverage what it does natively, and a lot of that has to do with leveraging location-based technology, and a lot of that has to do with sending maybe those push notification alerts, and a lot of that has to do with the ability to personalize a mobile app experience. And these are things we can't do as well in mobile web, and it's why people prefer applications. But if you're just wrapping your mobile website in app navigation and doing one, like you found, this is my favorite, you found that site on the internet that claims you can build an app in a day, don't click on it. Don't leave immediately, right? That's not the user experience that we're going for. The last one here, don't build an app if you don't have the marketing team to support it. Just like your mobile responsive site. Build only what you can manage. This will be a separate point of management. There are very few apps and mobile sites that are integrated to the same content management system, so this will be a separate work stream for you. So how do you approach building an app? This is a very oversimplified version of the process. So here goes, 7 steps, that's all it takes. All right, step 1, know what the competition built or someone who speaks to a similar audience. And there's App Store user data. So there's data in iTunes. There's also data in Google Play, right, where people write reviews. Perhaps you've done this at one point, and you've given app stars or something. So use that. That's free data. That's other people telling you what they think about apps that speak to your same audience. What features matter, what I like, what I don't like. People are very vocal, right? So use that data to understand those applications and create a list for yourself as well of what those applications do. So you can decide later if those matter for your business or not. Step 2, layer on features that the business needs. So you have business needs, like driving revenue, driving donations, driving memberships, whatever it happens to be. Layer on the features the app needs to do in order to drive your business goals. Identify how you can personalize the app experience. And personalization can mean a lot of things. If I'm signed in, you can just greet me as Kim when I come into the application. That's pretty basic. You can also personalize in terms of location. You can also integrate weather data pretty easily and personalize an experience based upon weather. I know it's cloudy today. Are you feeling sad, right? It's creepy when stuff does that, but those are ways in which you can personalize the experience. And then you'll have this big list of features, of things an app can do. And then you have the hard part, and that's prioritizing. And you typically prioritize in terms of time and budget. But the good news about prioritizing is if we're all going to update our apps, right? We've now got these massive budgets that we just talked about. And we're going to update our app 4 to 8 times a year. We don't need to build everything on day 1. And in fact, the user expects that app to evolve over time. So we're going to prioritize that list of features, likely based on time and budget, and get to work on our mobile app. So easy, right? We're going to work with our technical counterparts to build an application that meets your marketing needs. So even though we've established the features the app can do, what do we as marketers need as content that we can maybe update or refresh on a regular basis within the app? Make sure that whatever you're building has that included as well. And be an active tester. I've seen a lot of folks not get involved in the testing game. They think, something's been passed off to the technology team, so I'm hands off. I've worked with a lot of engineers, and as both a marketer and having a foot in the engineering world all the time as well, you might just want to take that app for a test drive before you release it to market, right? There's a lot of reasons why you'd want to do that. There can be surprises along the way, so make sure before that app goes live that as many people as possible within the organization are testing it and ensuring that it meets your needs as marketers. Step 7, we're almost there. Plan an app launch promotion and make sure it reaches customers in all touch points being online and offline to promote your application. And you don't just want to do this around the launch of the app, you also want to do this at subsequent updates of a mobile application. And you also want to have just a regular cadence of reminding users that you even have a mobile app that they can interact with you on. So, this is a herd of sheep. Oh, I didn't know this was animated. All right. Okay, so we're going to think of our mobile websites as an acquisition tool, and we're going to think of our mobile apps as a re-engagement tool for our members or our loyalists. And hopefully now, the mandatory takeaways. You see I have 9 takeaways here. So Mobile 101 is us getting that mobile optimized site live. And I cheated here because number 2 actually references the 7 best practices that I mentioned in mobile web. So I think I have more takeaways than 10, sorry guys. But you want to get that mobile responsive site live. Then you want to start considering, and maybe while that's even being built, you can start optimizing your presence across other channels in a mobile way, all of those channels that drive to your site from a mobile device. And then Mobile 301 would be assessing this need for a mobile application and starting to think about what that might look like. And number 10, because I only had 9, is to always measure and optimize. So you should be in a constant state of measurement and data analysis because we are data-driven marketers, right? So that's really the most important. That's why I got the beautiful orange circle here, number 10. But that is all I have to say on the topic of mobile. Unless you guys have any questions, I would be happy to take those now.